Singapore is known for being a garden city, but not many people are aware that through the years we evolved into a city in garden and now transforming into a city in nature. Today, let us take a look at some of the notable events that helped shape this city in nature and understand the significance behind it. Let's root for our future. According to the ASEAN Centre for Biodiversity, the region accounts for 42% of the world's total mangrove forests. However, the region had lost about 33% of its mangrove forests between 1980 and 2020, a drop of more than 63,000 square kilometers. That's more than 11 million football fields. Sungai Api-Api is one of the few mangrove swamps we have in Singapore. However, in May 1991, engineering work was done to widen the Sungai Api-Api Canal because the drainage system needed to be upgraded to ensure the safety of residents.
So after the widening, they put on a U-shaped channel, a very huge channel along the whole river, and it very much sort of removed the original mangrove.
Along with it, the benefits the mangroves brought were also removed. Mangroves protect us against the catastrophic consequences of climate change. Mangroves are able to store 10 times as much carbon as most ecosystems on land. When the natural mangroves are removed, Singapore loses these benefits. So, the need to re-establish and enhance the natural setting of Sungai Api-Api was very real. But there were challenges.
So there was a need now to make sure that the mangrove are re-established. So the problem was that this box channel, even though they fill it with soil, with sand and mud, they couldn't be planted. There was an attempt, over a year plus trying to plant back the mangrove, but all of them died. All the seedlings failed to establish. So what happened, the original problem was because they used very young saplings, propagules. Those, these mangrove plants, they actually use the seeds that are already grown on the mother plant, but they are too small. So when they are planted in the Sungai Api-Api, when the tides come in, the barnacles cover up all of them, and so they were unable to establish. So what I did was, I called a tender for 10,000 seedlings that are more than a meter height. So I used them and planted the mangrove seedlings from the river source, from the river mouth, right up to the HDB flats now. It's 100% artificial, because the re-establishment of this seedling, was so good that within 6 months, there are other sort of mangrove seedlings and all that they're brought in by the sea. They help colonize the whole river.
The success of the re-establishment and growth of mangroves at Sungai Api-Api is Singapore's way to incorporate nature into the urban environment in order to create a garden city. But it doesn't end there. In 2002, Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve was gazetted as a nature reserve, and it is the only wetland reserve in Singapore. In the same year, it was also recognized as a site of international importance for migratory birds and formally joined the East Asian Australasian Shorebird Site Network. In 2003, the reserve was declared Singapore's first ASEAN Heritage Park.
We were managing Sungai Buloh in 1993, just as the nature park itself. Then in 2001 now, we are happy that it was gazetted as a wetland reserve, as a new nature reserve. And this is the first time in history that we have a new nature reserve besides Bukit Timah and Central Catchment. And Sungai Buloh is very important for migratory birds. And during the winter months in the northern hemisphere, from September, October onwards, when it's winter, start of winter in the northern hemisphere, the migratory birds, could be thousands of them, will fly down south through the East Asian Australasian flyway down to Singapore to roost, to refuel, to fatten up first before they might continue the migration journey to Indonesia, to Australia, and then to New Zealand. So Singapore is a very important stopover site for migratory birds.
A total of 118 migratory bird species have been recorded in Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve. This helps boost Singapore's ecosystem, giving it a more vibrant wildlife. All these efforts have successfully made Singapore a green and committed garden city. And the next goal? City in a Garden. Singapore's Garden Festival is a series of flower and horticulture shows to appreciate tropical horticulture and floral artistry every year. Not only does it provide exposure for the floral designers, but it also allows people to know more about the unique showcases, such as winning entries from the Community Garden Edibles competition, reinforcing the concept of City in a Garden.
We have to interest the public. So one way is to exhibit to them the beauty, the benefits of having greenery. So we showcase a lot of plants, flowers, so that to create an awareness and keep a deeper interest in trees. So by looking at the flowers, looking at the beautiful pots of plants and so on, the arrangement and the associated areas, like we open up even stalls to sell seeds, sell all the planting paraphernalia, so that people are being encouraged to go into gardening.
While gardening has become a hobby for many during the pandemic, the initiative named Community in Bloom was also introduced in 2005.
National Park wanted to start a movement where people garden together. And at that time, we were, considering it as a community gardening, bringing residents, be it in the private housing estate or the private estates, in work in the hospital, organization, companies, and also in schools.
Today, Community in Bloom has over 1,700 community gardens across Singapore that have engaged more than 40,000 gardening enthusiasts. This project brings residents together and closer to nature, making Singapore City in a Garden.
So that's very important, that we want to start something. We have to start with the first step, and then we have to start it big, So that's how we overcome, the challenges. Make sure that enough people are, enthusiastic about this gardening. So that's when 2005 we started this program called Community in Bloom.
But Singapore never stops improving. Singapore doesn't just stop with these initiatives. Today, the latest green plan is to transform the island state into a city in nature, a concept that enhances the care and management for animals, as well as intensifies the existing greenery initiatives. The Bukit Timah Expressway Ecolink is one good example of how Singapore cares for the well-being of animals. When the Bukit Timah Expressway was built, the nature reserve was dissected into halves. Wildlife had no choice but to find ways across the multiple lanes on the expressway to get to the other side. Critically endangered animals, like the pangolin, would be found dead as they crossed the high-traffic road.
She dissected or bisected the nature reserves into two halves. The Bukit Timah Nature Reserve on one side and the Central Catchment Nature Reserve on the other half, the other part of it. So by this dissection itself, the animals from one half could not cross over to the other half, and then the Ecolink started to be constructed. So the Ecolink is a 62-meter long wildlife corridor built purposely for the movement of wildlife. So this corridor was started sometime in 2013 and was completed in 2015. So this corridor allows animals to cross from one half of the nature reserve to reconnect back to the other half. So that is the purpose for the wildlife corridor. And because we are the first in Southeast Asia to do this, first in the region, so Singapore became well known as the first country to build such a corridor for wildlife to cross.
The concept of city in nature also emphasizes greatly on the benefits of Mother Nature. Gardens relieve stress and stimulate the senses, while gardening provides a form of expression, physical activity, and release that helps people heal mentally and physically.
So we have to start small again, but think big. We start small by having the first garden in Hop Park. So that was our very first prototype. We used the elements of design, how we will engage all our five senses. And through that design, very clever design, ensure that the plants, the landscaping are key towards helping you to relax, to experience nature, right? I think it was quite successful because ever since then there are so many groups of people coming to experience the Terry Garden in Hop Park. That was in 2016. Right, from there on, we continue to grow. Now there are plans to have more than 30 gardens now by 2030.
Rejuvenation of nature, events to promote environmental awareness, and launching of platforms to engage the community. These are the movements initiated by our pioneers to ensure that Singapore will always reach the goal we set our mind on, to ensure a green, livable and sustainable home for generations of Singaporeans to come.
Oh, I think I have a lot of faith in the future generation because during my time as the group director of my division, I took in a lot of interns from Ngee Ann Poly, Singapore Poly, and as well as the ITEs. So these are young people, very fresh in their aspiration. They wanted to be part of the Garden City.
Oh, the future generation. I just hope that especially the younger ones coming up, will learn to love greenery. Greenery in the sense that they have chlorophyll. Because very important, I want to teach the younger people, without chlorophyll, there will be no life, including human life.
Whenever possible, be a volunteer. I think it's good to be a volunteer because by helping others, you also help yourself. This may seem to be a paradox as we are giving something away precious, but at the same time itself, it enriches your life, it enriches you. Because by helping others, you also help yourself, and many of these benefits that you receive are intangible.